Welcome back. We are here for another Courage session as part of the Texas Health Education Service and TMDSAS partnership. And we're really excited that we're going to have a member from the admissions team at the Dell Medical School joining us today. My name is Enrique Hasso. I'm the Associate Director of the Texas Health Education Service. And joining me today is Ms. Gaby Loredo.
Hi, everyone.
Would you mind telling us a little bit about your role at the Dell Medical School?
Yeah, so I have worked at Dell Medical School since the inaugural class first came on. I've been here since May of 2016, and I am the admissions coordinator as well as the JAMP coordinator for Dell Medical School. So
exciting stuff right now since the first class just graduated from Dell Medical School.
Yes. I still keep in touch with some of the people that just graduated and they're just starting residency. Today's July 1, so that's the typical day that most residencies start. So all of them are very nervous, but excited. So it's definitely exciting seeing their journey online.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I know we are in the midst of the summer craziness and y'all are just getting a ton of TMDSAS applications flooding in, as well as figuring out what this application cycle is going to look like. Are interviews going to be virtual? Are we going to do this? Are we going to do that?
Yes, I know.
So I'm so thankful that you're joining us today. And for those of you who are watching, we are taking your questions live to be addressed. And so we're checking both the Texas Health Education Service and the TMDSAS Facebook pages. So if you have any questions you'd like to ask of the Dell Medical School, please post them there and we will address them during this session. Before we get into anything too serious, I did want to bring up that we, in the online communities of both the TMDSAS Hub and the TMDSAS Non-Traditional students groups, we asked the question, and there was wrong answers only, how do you gain Texas residency? And we had some pretty amazing responses on there. Based on the feedback that we've gotten on the wrong answers for gaining Texas residency, I should probably turn in my Texas residency card right now. Some of the answers were like, ride a Longhorn through a bluebonnet field while drinking, what is a Big Red out of a Whataburger cup and listening to Selena. And I was like, this is amazing. I wish I could, but there's no way. So I guess kind of putting you on the spot, do you have any wrong suggestions on gaining Texas residency?
I think that the one that I heard of was, oh, you just need to buy a piece of land. So people would just go out to West Texas and just buy a plot of land for something ridiculously cheap.
Yeah.
So I remember that is a common one that I have heard, which, full disclosure, before I was in this, I really didn't know either. It was oh yeah, that sounds good. That's property owner. That works. Yeah. So, but that does not work.
That is so wrong.
I have since been informed that does not work. I was informed very early on.
Right, because for the record, those of you that are trying to establish Texas residency, you do have to establish domicile, which shows that you are living in Texas and intend to live here in the long term. So thank you for that. And if you are interested in contributing your own bad advice on gaining Texas residency and also joining in on some conversations about filling out the application, plotting your journey, do join us in those online communities. They are available to you. And the great part about those online communities is that we are monitoring them and making sure that all of the discussions on there are accurate and all the feedback that you're receiving is correct. Because the last thing you need is bad advice. There are plenty of other places for bad advice on the internet. And when we have bad advice, it's just for jokes. So starting off with the first question for you today is, the model for the curriculum at Dell Medical School is unlike anything else in Texas. Would you mind walking us through what that looks like?
Yeah, let me actually share my screen and show you the curriculum. Let's see if we can do this. Just a moment. Okay, so here is the curriculum. I hope you can all see it. So, yeah, it's pretty different. I feel like the first thing that stands out is the fact that our preclinical year is only 1 year. At most medical schools, it's usually 2 years. And so we start school earlier than everyone else. We start school at the end of June. The first day of class/orientation was last Monday. And then they go year round. So it's very limited time off. It's limited breaks. The longest break you're going to have is about 2.5 weeks at Christmas time, or excuse me, the holiday time for the winter break. You do get a spring break. That's the only time that you will get a spring break, more than likely in medical school at Dell Medical School. But yeah, and it's pretty fast moving as well. So, and then your second year, which you've just scroll down, year 2, that's where you actually get, to see patients. So you're doing all of your work in the hospitals and clinics around town. And then your third year, you have your year of growth, which, either means getting a dual degree or doing research. You don't have to decide what you want to do your third year until about halfway through your second year. So it really gives you time to really grow and develop as an individual, because maybe you come in, you're like, I really want to get that MBA. It's gonna be so prestigious from UT. But then the more and more you're involved, you're like, I'm really passionate about research. So, and then your fourth year is pretty traditional. But the thing about the third year too, so other schools do usually offer a dual degree, but they usually offer that as an extra year to tacked on. So it's more time, more money, where for us, it's all built into 4 years. So in 4 years, you can graduate with your MPH and MD if you wanted to. So it's a pretty good deal. Some other things I really want to bring up that I really enjoy talking about is interprofessional education. And so it's actually where you collaborate with students from the School of Social Work, Pharmacy, and Nursing, because as a physician, that's going to be the individuals you work with as a team, to better serve the patient. So yeah, just, building those relationships, figuring out why they went into those professions, breaking down the barriers. So, and that's all throughout the 4 years. And same thing with leadership too. So you're tested early on to see where your leadership style is. And they give you feedback on what your areas of improvement are and what your strengths are. And they just build upon that all throughout the 4 years. So it's pretty different, like Enrique was saying, but it's really exciting. And our students have been able to manage, the fast paced, like first year curriculum. There's just, it's a lot of like group work too. So, but it's, yeah, it may seem intimidating, but it's definitely doable. So
yeah, I think I want to ask a little bit more about that third year, because I think it's one that stands out the most to me. Could you walk us through like some of the projects that students have been doing as part of that?
Yeah. So I know one of the projects that one of the individuals that just graduated was working on. So before she was medical school, she was a really big volunteer with Meals on Wheels. And she had noticed that individuals, that was really their only human contact that they were receiving, and maybe they weren't doing very well medically. And so she started incorporating like wellness checks with the meal deliveries. And that was like here in Austin. So that was one of the projects. One of the things that someone has created that is a current MS4, and this wasn't necessarily like in his third year, this was something like prior to, that he was doing, I guess, right before that, is that he created a nonprofit called Good Apple. If you're in Austin, it's an amazing thing to get. You get a box. So if you've heard of like imperfect produce, it's similar. And so maybe like the bell pepper isn't up to standards that it can sell to HEB. So maybe it's not big enough to sell to HEB, but it's still perfectly good, healthy. And so what you do is for every person that purchases a box, a person in need gets one. So I know I subscribe to it. It's great. It has a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables in it. And it's just a good way to also be able to give back too. But they deliver it to your door as well. So it's really great. But yeah, so he created that, on his own. So that's been wonderful seeing that, get going. And it's won awards here in Austin. So yeah.
That's huge. And considering that, that initiative started by somebody who's not even a professional yet, they're still a student technically. And so seeing that initiative and that application that affects the community almost immediately is huge.
Especially right now during the pandemic. So, it's contactless drop offs. They drop off at your front door. They text you and it's like, okay, your box is on the way, or it was just dropped off. So it definitely helps those individuals that, maybe, can't get out of their homes, for certain health reasons.
Yeah. So in terms of what's different, would you mind walking us through maybe what might be common for a typical medical school curriculum within what we're seeing here?
So I know at least for like, are you talking about for the first year or what do you mean?
So the question was, is the curriculum standard for the Texas medical schools?
No,
So,
so for the most medical schools, you usually do 2 years of preclinical, and then your third year you go into clinics and hospitals,
right.
and then your fourth year, like I said, our fourth year and fourth years at other medical schools are very on par with each other. So yeah, and like I said, most other schools do usually offer dual degree, but that's usually tacked on. Where some schools they make you start if you were interested in PH immediately. So as to where maybe later on you're like, I really wasn't that interested in that degree after all. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And this is available on the website, correct?
Yes, it is available on our website.
Excellent. So for those of you that want to get a closer look into what the curriculum looks like at Dell Medical School, that's a great place for you to start, is on their website.
Yeah.
All right. We have another question coming in. Are you or anyone at Dell available for one-on-one counseling after the application cycle? For example, for those students that are planning to reapply.
So we used to do that. But as of I guess it was a year or two ago, the response was just so overwhelming. We couldn't keep up with the demand. And so we unfortunately had to start turning people away and asking individuals to go back, to their alma maters to seek help, just because we didn't feel it was fair if we couldn't provide it to everyone. So unfortunately, we don't do that anymore.
Right. And I think a great resource for those students that are looking for that type of guidance is really to explore options with your health professions office. If you are currently an undergrad student, you have access to a health professions advisor on your campus. Go and talk to them, look at your application, explore any opportunities for you to grow in the next year while you're preparing to reapply. If you don't have access to an advisor, for example, those of you that are non-traditional students, there are programs like available through NAP, which is the National Association for Advisors of the Health Professions. And they actually have a volunteer advisor program. And so we have several advisors throughout the state who volunteer to accept students who have need of advising resources or access to an advisor. And so there are plenty of opportunities out there. And then of course there are private advisors whom you can hire to provide you feedback directly if those of you are are able to do that. So there are plenty of options available out there. Okay, so we have quite a bit to talk about with regards to Dell. It's a really unique school, but right now with COVID-19, it's kind of weird with how everything has changed in such a short amount of time. Would you mind walking us through some of the most recent impacts caused by COVID-19, maybe about the application, and then issues with like pass-fail coursework and things like that?
And so, I think a lot of schools are, coming across that we have decided, that we really value the students' safety. And, we are totally fine taking pass fail for this past semester that was really impacted by COVID-19. And it's nothing that's going to be held against the student in any way. I know some schools are giving the option to choose a grade, but we're completely fine with accepting pass fail for this past spring. So yeah, I'm sure it was a really hard adjustment for a lot of students. And depending on your family circumstance, worrying about a grade should take priority at this time. It should be your wellness and your family's wellness. So.
And have you had any discussions with what kind of activities might be able to fill in for those students who may have had shadowing or volunteer experiences that were canceled because of COVID this summer?
I have seen some students where they were, they've listed on their application, like I was supposed to do research with this individual or do this, and it was canceled. So just kind of letting me know what was maybe supposed to happen. And I do see some individuals that are able to find some volunteering opportunities, even online virtually. So I think it's a little bit harder to find, but they definitely exist. And I've seen, several that are still taking place. So.
Yeah, and we've definitely had these discussions on previous Courage sessions, particularly the one with Dr. Calloway from the Long School of Medicine, where we talked about, virtual opportunities or even opportunities for you to stay engaged. We live in a great age where you can Google and watch YouTube videos and just keep your mind active and engaged in learning. Of
Yes.
course, watching a YouTube video is never going to be a replacement for the real thing. So don't go adding on your healthcare activities section of the application that you watched, 10 hours of YouTube videos of surgeries. But it's a good idea to use that to keep your mind active and engaged. And then, of course, for those of you who had MCAT tests that were delayed, I mean, any other application cycle, students would be begging for the opportunity to have an extra week or an extra 2 weeks to study. How are the review of applications affected by later MCATs?
We've always told applicants that, it doesn't really, we always tell people to apply early, but as long as you get your application in before, the deadline, we will review your application. So, and obviously this year is going to be really more impacted than any other year. So we've already started reviewing applications. We see, the date that some people are planning to take it. We don't review applications until we receive that MCAT score. We've extended our interview calendar. I know you may have been wanting to bring this up later on, but we usually would start interviews at the beginning of August, but this year we have pushed that and are not starting interviews until September, and we're going all the way through February. So in a traditional cycle, we would go through almost like the middle of January, but this year we're going to be going almost till the beginning of February. So plenty of time, to get your application in, review it. I definitely recommend reviewing that, review it. I can't emphasize that enough because I know those applications take a really long time, but it's definitely worth it to review it before you hit that submit button. Because once you submit it, you can't really change anything on there.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah.
And I've heard so many horror stories of, putting a placeholder where there's supposed to be an essay and you submit.
That's exactly what I'm thinking of. I'm like, no.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, I really feel for those students, but
absolutely.
when we bring that up for discussion during the Dean's Council that advises TMDSAS, it really begs the question of, what kind of traits are we seeing here if they're not taking the time to look over their application? So to look over your application, log back into the TMDSAS application, and there's a hyperlink that says 2021 application, and it downloads the entire PDF of your application exactly as each one of the schools will see it. Take a look at that.
Print it out, yeah.
Print it out, review it, highlight it, mark it up, and make your edits before you submit. Because as soon as you hit that submit button, so many of the sections are blocked off from you being able to edit. There are still opportunities for you to change things like your evaluators can be updated, your coursework can be updated as you complete each semester, but for the most part, a lot of sections of the application are going to be locked.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to come back to the COVID situation.
Yeah.
And you were mentioning how there were delays with application reviews in particular.
Mm-hmm.
And so for students who are taking the MCAT, I've gotten this question so many times. It's like, my MCAT's in July 7th. Is that too late this cycle?
No. Considering it's a cycle, no, it's not. That's considered early this cycle.
Exactly.
So we are still hitting our targets as far as how many people we want to review. We're going to be sending secondaries out very, very, very soon. So definitely, keep an eye on your email if you've already submitted your application and have an MCAT score, because people will be receiving those very soon. So yeah, but no, considering if you take your MCAT in July this year, that's not late at all, especially considering it's supposed to be a really quick turnaround as far as getting the score. I believe it's 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So
excellent. Yeah, and with the accelerated review of the scores and receipt of the scores, that's really helpful. You mentioned the secondary application. Mm-hmm. Would you mind walking us through, somebody hit submit on the application, TMDSAS with, as we see with the office hours, Alana and Nicole and the entire TMDSAS team goes through everything on the application, transmits it to the school. What happens when you receive it?
So when you receive it, There's a small team of people that do the initial review of the application, and basically what they're looking for is they're looking for a strong mission fit, as well as individuals that can demonstrate that they can handle the rigor of medical school. And so that's a review of your MCAT and your GPA. Regarding your GPA, we're not looking for the highest GPA. We're not expecting everyone to have a 4.0 or have a 90 something percentile on their MCAT. We really are looking for people that have more than just grades. But when it comes to grades, we are looking for trends. So do you have an upward trend, a downward trend, an oscillating trend? It's very normal to see people have a tough time transitioning from high school to college. That's completely normal, as well as maybe have a bad year. So, you could break up with a significant other, you could have family issues. That is life, and I'm fully aware of that. So, you can also explain maybe like, hey, I noticed that there was a significant dip in my GPA during my sophomore year, just if you're comfortable with it, just explain kind of like what happened. Obviously, you don't need to know all the details, but the more information you give us, the better decision we can make. Because if you don't acknowledge it, then I'm like, well, I noticed there was a huge dip, but I just don't know what happened. So, and they never really brought it up. So just something to kind of consider whenever you are submitting your application. So, but we're definitely looking for a strong mission fit. Just because you have a 4.0 GPA and a 95 percentile does not guarantee you're going to get a secondary from us at all. So yeah, I've seen people with GPAs and maybe it's like a 3.4 or 3.5, and maybe they had to work full time, but they moved up in their job. Like that right there is going to show leadership, innovation, community engagement. Not so much community engagement, but leadership innovation is really what we're looking for, as well as community engagement. So yeah, we're taking all those things into consideration. So it truly is holistic. And I know people use that term all the time, but we really, really, truly do look at people that are really wanting to give back to the community. So in a significant way, or have the leadership and innovation traits that we're looking for.
Yeah, and as far as mission fit, the mission statement and the value statement is all listed on the website.
That's correct.
So it's all there. It's
all there. It's very transparent. Like it really is. I'm not trying to like play any games. Like I'm like, it's all right there.
Yeah. All right. And then from that point, what does the secondary application look like? And what is the process? Actually, first off, what is the process for applicants receiving secondary applications?
So not everyone receives a secondary application. It is free, so it doesn't cost anything. So you don't have to, I know sometimes I get emails where it's, oh, can I have a waiver of the fee? And I have to let them know like, oh, there is no cost. So you don't have to worry about that. But several years ago, we started implementing a video secondary. And so it's 3 questions, which I think anxiety starts building in people when they hear it's only 3 questions and it's a video. You can't edit it in any way. I feel like the anxiety is just heightening with what I'm saying. But they all revolve around leadership, innovation, and community engagement. And it's all, we're asking questions that, ask you regarding experiences, past experiences in those domains. So they're not trying to get you in any sort of way. Just because you maybe get 1 question on leadership doesn't mean, if someone gets secondary, they're going to get the exact same question in leadership. So there is a, there is a bank of questions for each domain. And so the way it works is like, so you have to get invited and then you open it up, you can test your equipment just to make sure everything's working. And then you, oh gosh, my train of thought is leaving. So then the question, it plays, it replays, it has subtitles. You have 30 seconds to think of a response and then 2 minutes to answer. So it definitely takes a lot less time than writing a really long essay. And you can take your time with it. You can do 1 question, come back an hour, come back the next day and do it. It's completely up to you, but your application won't be reviewed for an interview until it's complete. And if you're not comfortable doing the video, there is an option to do a written secondary, which some people still do. It's a very small percentage of people, but that's not held against you in any way. We've definitely had people that felt that, they were better represented in writing and have still gained admission into our medical school. So like I said, it's not many people that do that. It's a very tiny percentage, but it is an option. So that's nice.
So thank you for that feedback. We've got some questions that I want to catch up on, and then we will hit on the interviews this fall. That's a big topic. So first question on the TMDSAS page that we have here, will basic bio and chem classes taken at community colleges be a hindrance?
No, not at all. I feel like some people have to take them there depending on like their current circumstance. Maybe they're working full time. You know, it doesn't make a difference. We are going to look for patterns to see if you are dipping out of university to take all of, maybe some of the prerequisites at a junior college. So like I said, there's no preference. As long as it's regionally accredited, we will accept it. Like I said, I'm very understanding of like people's circumstances. So as long as I don't see a pattern of you constantly, oh, I'm going to take this prerequisite at this college. Like you're fine taking 1 or 2 courses at a community college. So.
Right. And then always it's a good idea to take more courses beyond the prerequisites.
Yes.
It's
it's
the
always
bare
a good
minimum
idea.
of what you need. And so,
Yes.
Taking a couple of classes at a community college it's not going to hurt you. But as you just mentioned, it's when trends start appearing that it becomes an issue.
And that's the thing. Yeah. And there's some people that start, their college career at, a junior college. Mm-hmm. So yeah. So they would take some courses there. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. All right. Next question. Does Dell Med send out rolling secondaries, or should you expect to hear them within a certain amount of time?
No, it's rolling. Yeah, it's always rolling. So yeah, like we start usually at the beginning of July sending them out, and it goes all the way throughout the cycle. So, and there's no, people are like, oh, I submitted my, in early June, I haven't heard anything, so I'm not going to hear anything. That's not necessarily true. We just get to some applications sooner rather than later. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then we have another question about multiple MCAT retakes. Mm-hmm. Would you mind walking us through how Dell evaluates students that have multiple MCAT retakes?
So yeah, I get this question as well. Some people are like, oh, do you average it out and we take the highest score? So, and I've definitely seen some people do significantly better during their second time. There was one applicant, I guess it was a year or 2 ago. The first time they took the MCAT, they got a 50 percentile. And the second time they received a 95 percentile. It was a huge, significant jump. So yeah, I've seen some people go from like maybe 55 percentile to like 75 percentile. So that's still like, a really respectable jump. So absolutely.
Great. Yeah, that's a huge jump.
Yeah, that was
incredible.
I think that was probably the biggest jump I've seen. I was like, whoa, like they changed their studying habits somehow. So yeah, it was pretty impressive.
That's what it comes down to. Figure out what's going wrong. And
exactly.
Yeah, awesome. All right, we are caught up with questions so far, but of course we are here till 2 o'clock to answer any and all of your questions about Dell Medical School. So next big topic is the interviews. The burning question on everybody's minds, are the interviews going to be virtual this year for Dell Medical School?
Yes, they will be. They will be virtual. I feel like most medical schools are going virtual this year. I've been told the residency interviews have gone virtual as well. But yes, and while we are going to miss, being able to meet you at the door and shake your hand this year, we are working on ways, to still make it somewhat interactive and, really still be able to create a bond with the groups that you're assigned with on that interview day. So our format's still going to be the same. It's still going to be, an MMI and, it's 5 MMIs and then a traditional interview as well as a group interview. So the format isn't going to change. We're still also going to have a video of the tour of the building. So you're still going to be able to see the building, even though it's not in person. And our dean is always the individual that usually tends to welcome students that morning. He is still going to be available and will be answering questions that day too. So he's usually available for about like 15 minutes for questions on interview day. And we're bringing him back this year as well to answer any questions you may have. So, yeah.
Yeah, so the experience will still be equitable to other years.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're not going to be fed lunch or breakfast, which is a bummer.
But what is it, Texas barbecue?
I think we usually do like thundercloud sandwiches. Doesn't like San Antonio do barbecue?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm not going to call them out.
Oh.
Yeah. we got to keep it local uh, with those options. But yeah, um, kind of on the same subject of the interviews, I know that we've had, um, for the most part, it sounds like Zoom might be a platform. Would you happen to have an idea of what platform?
It's more than likely going to be Zoom. Yeah, that's how we're like practicing it. So yeah, it's more than likely going to be Zoom. And we're also looking for ways for if maybe someone doesn't have a a stable internet connection, they could like, maybe either go visit their health profession's office and get set up there, or if they're non-traditional, they don't have that, maybe set up to where they could like come and then we could do it via an iPad, they could do it in their car. So yeah, we're definitely exploring many, many ways and taking all of this into consideration when we're planning these interview days. So, we're still in the process of, that too.
Yeah. So until students hear back from Dell Medical School, that's when it's official.
Yes.
I wanted to know, would you all happen to have any feedback on how students should prepare for a virtual interview?
And so our applicant's guide to admissions has a lot of good information on how to prepare for the interview, on what's going to happen on the MMIs, on the group. We also send an email explaining exactly what we're looking for in each domain. Like it's like for MMIs, like we're really thinking, like we really want to see you explain your thought process just out loud. So but yeah, and we are updating that right now. And so that should be updated probably like in the next like month, that will be updated with like more information as far as a virtual interview. Because obviously there is somewhat of a small element that's lost. Like, you don't get to shake hands with someone and have that. But I still think there's still going to be a lot of good opportunities to be able to present yourself as a good applicant, virtually.
Excellent. Well, we're looking forward to that.
Yes.
We've got some follow-up questions on interviews. Do you anticipate any changes for next year's application cycle in the way you conduct interviews, etc.? I'm not going to hold you to that. We don't have any crystal ball on.
Yeah, who knows where we're going to be?
Yeah. Even this application cycle, there's still so many things in the air, as we just heard from you, and we've heard from all of the other schools that we've had on the career sessions. There's still so many considerations that need to be kept in mind. But the one thing that is consistent among the considerations for all the schools is really the equity of experience, meaning that even though you're interviewing virtually or you're not able to visit the campus, you're not able to engage with the admissions committee directly like any typical year, you're not missing out on those opportunities. And so what's important for you all to really keep in mind is that the schools are doing everything in their power to make sure that the experience is equitable. It's not going to be the same, as you just mentioned. Shaking hands tells you so much. Actually being able to hang out in the back corner during lunch and chat, that might not be something that's available. But the primary purpose of the interviews is going to be kept in being able to show the students what the school's about and obviously host the interviews.
And also we're looking for ways to give the the students that come to interview opportunities to come and speak with our current students. So usually at our interviews, we would have a student-led panel. And so for about 30 minutes out of the hour, there'd be no faculty or staff in the room. And so you could actually ask any questions you wanted to without being afraid of like, oh, I'm not asking the right question, or holding back on anything. So we're still looking for those opportunities to be able to give to those students as well. We also usually have like a student-led social the night before, and we're still looking for opportunities to be able to do that, obviously virtually. But definitely just trying to recreate as much of the experience as possible. So.
All right. Somebody's asking, are notes allowed during virtual interviews?
So on the MMIs, even in person, we do allow that. So yes, you can definitely take notes if you were interviewing, doing the MMI, just like you would in real life. So it is pretty limited, the time. So, the time isn't going to change as far as like what the blocks are. It's still going to be 2 minutes to read the question, and then you're going to walk in and have so many minutes in with that individual. So, yeah.
Excellent. Next question. What happens if a student's internet cuts off mid-interview? And I will admit, during Courage sessions, that's my nightmare. Is that my internet will cut off and we have to cut a session short. So that is a very valid concern.
So again, that's one of the things we're taking into consideration when we're planning as well. Like, it's like, okay, do we, say for example, what was happening during MMI, do you let them start over again, or, do you I don't know, like, we're definitely taking all those things into consideration. Like I said, even for the people that don't have stable internet, we're talking about, like, maybe we can, have them set up in their health professionals office. So that way it is, or maybe we set up to where, like, they can have it, do the interview via an iPad here in our parking lot. So we're definitely exploring all those options and have those questions at the forefront of our mind when we're planning all these interviews.
Yeah. So great questions, but again, we still don't quite know yet. And
yeah,
as we approach the date, obviously, some of these things will become more clear, some of those opportunities. So just stay connected.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Going back to the primary TMDSAS application, what are some of the major pitfalls that applicants make in either entering experiences or their essays, stuff that they discuss? What is like
the one that I immediately come to was like the essays one. Yeah. So I think just really like not like, I know some people are like, oh, but I'm such a strong mission fit. Well, I really think it depends on not depends, but it really depends on like how much like you put in and what your descriptions are under your activities. Like, you really, like, I'm not going to know what this organization is about unless you tell me what it's about and exactly what you did in it. So, because there's some people are reviewing application and they're like, I was the president, and I'm like, president of what? Like, and it doesn't list the organization, it says like, oh, and I was over 50 people. And I'm like, okay, but what was the organization called? So yeah, so just the more information you can include on there, the better. So yeah.
Yeah, and it is a very limited space. There are only 300 characters for activities. But of course, you can enter president of AMSA or president of SNMA.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, if it's a really meaningful activity, you could select it to be one of the top 3 meaningful activities, which grants you, on top of the 300 characters, grants you an additional 500 characters to discuss the impacts of that organization. And if it was super, super impactful, you might want to talk about it in the essays or even in the optional essay, which is your opportunity to talk about anything that wasn't discussed anywhere else on the application.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. So
another big hot button issue that we get often is on the question of whether or not somebody's non-traditional.
Okay.
Do you have any feedback on that?
So there's no preference. Like, I feel like out there from the rumors I've heard, it's like, oh, Dell prefers this, but we really don't have any preference. We're really looking for the people that are the best, fit for us. So, and like you said, in every class, if you see our class, like, there's people that are very non-traditional. There's people that are 35, 40, had careers in something completely not related to medicine, and then, felt called to medicine, complete the prerequisites, and now they're here in medical school. But no, so there really is like no preference, for non-traditional or traditional. We're really looking just for the best fit. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for that feedback. On the topic of entering activities, how should students abbreviate things? And we've addressed this with TMDSAS, if it's a common abbreviation, like say, instead of writing in Texas A&M, you could write TAMU.
Yeah.
Or even when entering coursework, oh, that's a terrible example. But
no, not that one.
Always enter your coursework exactly as it appears.
Yes.
But with activities like SNMA I just mentioned, that's a pretty common one.
That's why, like AED, like I'm very familiar with that one.
Right. I will say that in the example that the examples provided here, it's SACNAS. There's also ABRCMS and ASBMB. I don't think I'm familiar with those, and I'm sure
Neither
that
am I. And there's definitely been times where I'm like, what is this? And I will Google it, or it's like,
right.
oh, what is this? Like, oh, they said they found this organization. There's definitely been times I have Googled many organizations.
Yeah, and so I think,
So,
obviously the character limit is limited, very limited, for the activity section. Uh, if it's a longer acronym, you might want to spell it out at least the first time, and then just use the
yes.
acronym there henceforth. Um, but for more, I mean, like SNMA has a chapter in almost every school, yeah, as does
Mhm.
AMSA. Um, and some of those organizations are national. So I think with those, it might be easier to just use the acronym, but with more local groups. Here we have the example. SACNAS is a Society for Advancement of Chicanos, Hispanics, and Native Americans in Science.
I don't think I've ever
That
heard of
is
that
very long.
one. I've
Yeah,
never heard of that one.
thank you, Ayana, for sharing that one.
Yeah.
I would definitely recommend listing that out, because uh, that was not one that I would have known off the top of my head,
Yeah.
and it is pretty long, and
That one is
it
long.
might have a pretty big impact on the activities character limit, but I think in that instance it might be a good idea.
Yes,
All
I agree. Fully.
right.
It sounds like a great organization, but I'm like, yeah. So
Exactly, because I don't think I would have picked that up. And then not every evaluator might always be keen to Google something.
yeah, true.
So you want to provide as much information as possible, while respecting character limit.
Yes.
So let's see. We are, yeah, she's still submitting the different acronyms. The other one was Annual Biomedical Research Conference for Minority Students, American Society for Biochemistry and Molecular Biology. Yeah, definitely continue to list those out, at least the first instance.
Yeah.
In the healthcare activities section, would you recommend putting the names of doctors shadowed, or will their specialty suffice?
Their specialties will suffice. Like, I'm not going to know all the doctors in and around Texas or even outside. There's only, I don't know. I think sometimes people like think, oh, if they see that I shadowed this one doctor, it's going to be amazing. I don't know all the amazing doctors. I really don't. So there's many of them. So I know some people listening, some people don't. We really don't have a preference for that. So it's really whatever you're comfortable with. So
There's no association of awesome doctors.
no, there isn't. Like, I mean, there's sometimes I'm like, oh, I know that doctor, but that doesn't make or break whether or not I'm going to give you a secondary. So, yeah.
Now, I might counter that with, like, if this is a doctor that's very well known, maybe you might want to name drop.
I guess you could, but it's not like that's going to be the decision that makes me, like, oh, because they shadowed this one doctor, they've got to get a secondary. No, that's not going to matter.
Yeah, but if they're writing about how a doctor influenced their decision to pursue that career in an essay, maybe that would be a more appropriate place to also list out the name.
Absolutely. And something that, like, this was before obviously the pandemic, people would always ask me when I was out recruiting, like, oh, I'm really having trouble, getting shadowing hours. Again, this was pre-pandemic. I would tell individuals, especially, like, I know here in Austin, I heard a lot of that, is that it doesn't have to be in Austin. It could be in one of the surrounding communities, it could be in your hometown, it's really just a matter of getting that experience. Some people were like, I never thought about that. I'm like, yeah, you could go to Buda, you can go to Kyle, you can go to Georgetown. So it doesn't have to be just one hospital. And something that I always used to recommend, again, pre-pandemic, was if you have your own physician. So that relationship has probably been established. So, approaching them because they might be more likely to you shadowing them. So, yeah. Again, pre-pandemic, sorry, y'all.
Yeah,
but it was definitely something that people were like, how do I get this? And I'm like, well, if you have a relationship with the physician, I would start there because that relationship already exists.
Yeah. So. And I think, even right now with the, and I talk about this for the past few CURD sessions, but like the implementation of telemedicine right now, kind of breaks down that location barrier.
Yes.
You know, if you're scribing, you might be working with physicians who aren't even in the same state.
Yeah.
Yeah, think outside the box for
Yes. Be
experiences.
creative. Absolutely.
We have some questions from an advisor. Hi,
Oh,
Shirley.
nice.
Tagging on your example of writing out abbreviations, do more polished applications earn points during a review, like using grammar? And I've heard this example a lot is, should you bullet point your activities, or should you actually write out full grammatical sentences?
I think from what I feel, for the most part, I don't really see many bullet points. I think I've seen a few, but most people, I know I'm used to just reading, like small paragraphs, but I would be fine with bullet points. I feel like as long as everything is covered, as far as explain what the organization is about, what you did, your responsibilities and roles, that's really what I'm looking for. So the format doesn't matter. It's just the information in there. So.
And then she had a follow-up. Since the application is essentially on honor code, have you had an instance where you called a supervisor to check somebody's employment or participation?
There have been several instances where we have, made phone calls, or there was one instance that I knew a person that had created an organization at a certain university. Like I knew them personally. And I'd review an application and they had claimed to have found the organization. And I even went to the organization and it had the person that I knew, like, yes, this person created. And I was like, oh, this person, like, just so they created it. And I just went to the website and I know this person. So yeah, it is all based on the honor system, but man, I would not risk that. I would not risk that just because if you volunteered somewhere, say for example, and you said that you spent a significant amount of time there, I'm going to wonder why maybe you didn't choose them to maybe do a letter of recommendation for you. It's like, but you spent so much time there. They should know you very well and speak very highly about you if you did all these things you said you did. So there's just always little things that I'm going to look for that I'm like, it doesn't make sense. Like I've seen people falsify applications, like, it was a re-applicant and I looked at their current application as well as their other applicant, and they tripled the amount of community service hours in one category, and it was for a category that had already passed. So I was like, you can't go back in time and triple your hours. So yeah, we do a very thorough review on applicants. And like I said, I Google stuff numerous times where it's like, oh, you did this organization. Oh, let me look it up really quick. So yeah, I mean, I would not recommend it at all. So
you shouldn't do it as an applicant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I've heard of some examples, people actually omitting entire degrees that they earned. They just decided not to report that they already had an associate's degree, or they already had some of the coursework that should have been counted in their GPA calculation, but since they tanked so bad, it would have brought down their GPA. The schools, they always find out. First and foremost, this application is really the first rule that you really need to consider is that this is telling the schools who you are. This is everything that you've worked for culminates in this application to this point. And by not abiding by the regulations set in the certification page, that everything is correct and accurate and everything else is listed out on there, that really raises a huge red flag with the schools, because it says that you really don't care too much about the rules. So in practice, does that mean that you would be more keen to flub the rules, cause non-practice suits, have unethical behaviors that when paired with a medical degree might be criminal at that point? You're seeing it as just like, oh, I added a few hours here or there. But the schools are seeing it as it's their responsibility to keep somebody from who's done intentional flubbing of their application or intentional omissions or things like that. It really raises a huge red flag for the school. So don't take any of this lightly. The application is important for you to get correct and for you to have it be a great reflection of who you are and what you bring to the table.
On that note, so I used to work at the Texas Medical Board for almost a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And on that application, for every lie you told that was caught, so say, for example, you weren't arrested and then I ran your background report, it was $2,000 a lie.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was pretty serious. And because you did lie, it could be on your permanent record for the rest of your medical career. Like any patient looking you up could see that you lied about that DWI for the rest of your life. So it's better to give us too much information than not enough information. So, and just don't falsify. So.
Well, we've got about 10 minutes left in the current session. So if anybody has any last minute questions to ask of the Dell Medical School with Gaby Loredo joining us today, please do ask. But I do want to ask this one last question of you is, with everything going on right now in relationship to COVID-19, what does the medical school experience look like for students? You know, we're talking about equity in terms of the application and the interview process, but once people get in, you know, is it a similar or comparable experience for them?
You know, so our first class just started last week, like I said earlier, and we're definitely, you know, realize that they don't have those opportunities, you know, to interact with their current students. So we're definitely creating those opportunities. I know what we've been doing for the past, I'd say, week or two, and for the next week or two going forward, is we're having chats with students. Like it's like we have them divided in groups of like, oh, who likes going on hikes or who loves barbecue. And so then we pair them up. I believe 4 or 5 current MS1s can sign up, and then current students can sign up, and as well as a faculty or staff member. And then so we share like, oh, this is my favorite barbecue place, or these are all the great places for hikes. So we're definitely trying to find ways for them to build those relationships and bonds, because we're aware that, you know, given that we can't meet in person right now, those relationships and bonds are still really important. And some of the organizations are still meeting virtually, of course, but definitely giving opportunities for students to discuss like what they're passionate about and just get involved with their classmates. So, yeah. Awesome. I mean, it's unfortunate that we can't meet in person. So
I agree.
Especially given our curriculum is so group focus based, and, you know, doing it in the computer is obviously not the same as being around a table and working on the project. But I think we're doing the best we can do with the situation. So
yeah, and in a typical year, you know, the Dell Medical School building is built for these group projects. They have
even the lecture hall, like, you know, during the lecture, it's not just a lecture, like you're broken up into groups and you have whiteboards behind you to collaborate. So obviously you're still being broken up, so, you know, they have the breakout rooms to be broken into, but obviously it's different, of course, but that's going to be at any school right now. So
yeah, and I think it's important for people to remember that the school's main purpose is to prepare you for those board exams, and that experience is not going away because of COVID. Everybody's getting prepared just as well as everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Just probably not as fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, on that sad note, let's raise the energy level again, and I want to give you an opportunity to address all of the applicants this application cycle, or even future application cycles who've been affected. What advice do you have for them?
You know, just, you know, keep focusing on your safety and wellness at this point in your families. That I feel like it should be the top concern for everyone right now, is really just staying safe, especially with so many cases surging right now in Texas. And, you know, really just, again, like you were saying, to stay engaged, you know, with your classmates as well as, you know, your school. And then look for those opportunities virtually to, get involved and give back to the community, because they do exist. I mean, I was just looking at one opportunity recently, and they were, still doing GED classes for individuals via Zoom. So that right there is like a perfect example of an opportunity where you could still give back to the community in a significant way. I do feel like, sad and unfortunate that you can't have those real life experiences regarding like research, as well as like shadowing opportunities, but I would say just do the best you can. We're very understanding right now of the situation. So, and we're definitely going to continue to be as well. So, but I'm excited to review more applications, excited to see people virtually for now, and invite them for interviews. And we're definitely looking for ways in the fall, even though interviews are going to be online, to give them opportunity to come and see the building if you've interviewed. So, yeah.
Excellent. There's still hope.
Yes.
Yes.
We're trying to be positive right now, but.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And just in the nick of time, we have one last question that came up. And it's again about abbreviations.
Yeah.
Abbreviation.
You can email me too. I can answer those questions.
Should I spell the abbreviation each time on the application, or will spelling it once in one section be enough?
I spell it once in one section should be enough, and then you can, but also I want to make one more plug too. If you have any questions after this, this is our email. I hope you can see it. It's the Apply Dell Med.
It's applydellmed@utexas.edu.
Yeah, so I'm one of the people that answers those questions. So
that's the email.
Send your questions my way if you didn't get
Dell Medical School.
Yes.
So if you have any questions,
please send them my way. So
yeah. Excellent. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us today. This was amazing. And hopefully you all get some great feedback and advice and insights into what happens to your applications once it reaches Dell Medical School. So on behalf of everybody at TMDSAS and Texas Health Education Service, and obviously at Dell Medical School, all the best of luck to all of our applicants, and we'll see you tomorrow for our next Courage session with the Texas A&M University College of Medicine. Thanks.